The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. This game will be played Tuesday, December 31st in Orlando, Florida, between Illinois and South Carolina. South Carolina 10-point favorite, total 49.5, 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. I already mentioned this, but go to Stagger In, obviously, for the bar. Kaya, get your Filipino fix. Beamer has been very good in these spots. Great in bowls. Team seems motivated. So does Illinois, for what it's worth. And Illinois' last bowl win came in 2011. I think this is going to be a pretty good bowl game as far as who we get playing. Where I think this game gets decided is in the trenches, where I think South Carolina will have a big advantage, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They will be missing Kyle Kennard, their star defensive end, and they will be missing Raheem Sanders. It's going to be Juju McDowell, Oscar Attaway, splitting the carries at running back. That there is a bit of a drop off there. Other than that, it looks like everyone else is going to play for South Carolina. Illinois, it looks like everyone's going to play except for Pat Bryant. That's important. He is such a critical piece to this offense. With him and Franklin on the outside, uh, they're tough to defend. Now it's really just Franklin. They're not really, I don't think they're going to have a ton of success running it on South Carolina. And you can't really throw in South Carolina anyway. And now you don't have Bryant. The offensive line is very questionable. And you look at Luke Altmaier, 5 interceptions, but 18 turnover-worthy plays. He's been lucky. There's turnovers, there's mistakes coming. And look at what he did against the top defenses this year. Penn State, 16 of 26, 185. Michigan, 9 of 19, 80. Oregon, 17 of 35, 169. Minnesota, 20 of 33, 226. Overall, 54% completion percentage, 160 yards on average, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 3 big time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays. I like the Illinois secondary. There's some talent back there with the Scots. They're solid against the pass. They don't give up explosives. But I think with Sellers' legs and South Carolina's defense dominating in the trenches, I like the Cox.
Yeah, I haven't made a decision whether I want South Carolina or the team total over. And you say team total over, their defense is excellent. Yeah, and Illinois' offense is prone to allowing other teams to have pick sixes, scoop and scores. Let's look at Illinois, 109th in havoc allowed, 99th in pass blocking. South Carolina is going to be all over this Illinois offense, and that can translate into some easy points. And I don't care what's going on, who Luke Altmaier is throwing to. This is still a South Carolina team that was top 35 and creating a contested catch. We know what that they can do in the defensive trench. And I haven't even mentioned a guy who we're going to be in love with next year, Lenoris Sellers. I just don't see an avenue with Illinois being 128th in defensive rushing success rate. Rocket Sanders isn't there. I don't think it's a problem. Lenoris Sellers is a serious force on the ground in the RPO game, and that is bad news for Illinois. So I'm kind of leaning team total over South Carolina or spread. It'll come in before the game.
All right, moving on to the Kinder's Texas Bowl. Kinder's, what is that? I think that's like just like barbecue seasoning. Kinder's Texas Bowl between LSU and Baylor. Baylor flipped from underdog to favorite. They're now 3.5 point favorite, total 59.5. This game's 3:30 Eastern, ESPN on New Year's Eve in Houston, Texas at NRG Stadium. Great diverse food city, Houston, by the way. Pit room, breakfast, get the breakfast barbecue tacos, bar Blue Dorn, Josephine's, Kata Rabata, actually really good as well. A couple options there. Why is this line flipped? Well, Baylor looks like they're going to be close to full strength. Everyone's playing. This is the Dave Aranda revenge game. Also, it's in Texas. Baylor might also get a couple defenders back healthy. They were seen in practice. Cornerback, outside linebackers. They don't really have anyone that impactful in the portal. And then you look at LSU. I mean, you have starting wide receiver CJ Daniels committed to Miami. Their starting safety, Sage Ryan. He's the green dot committed to Ole Miss. None of these guys are going to play. Couple depth pieces at wide receiver and tight end. And then you look at who opted out. Your left tackle, Will Campbell. Your right tackle, Emory Jones. Your tight end, Mason Taylor. Your wide receiver, one, Kyron Lacey. And your starting safety, Major Burns. You want to have both of your starting safeties. So they've had, and their offensive line was the strength of their team all season long. And I don't think Garrett Dellinger, their left guard, is going to play either. So what does that mean? Well, in practice recently, here was the starting offensive line for LSU. Left tackle Tyree Adams. He had 11 snaps at left tackle this year, 78 total. Left guard Paul Mubenga. Yeah, he was the regular starter at the end of the year. Center DJ Chester. He's their normal starter. Right guard Bo Bordelon, 46 snaps on the year. And then they're going to kick Miles Frazier out from right guard to right tackle. The wide receivers, they're still okay with Anderson, Hilton, and Xavier Thomas, but super, super murky from a depth perspective. If anyone gets hurt, it's bad. There's only one tight scholarship tight end on the roster in Green. The offensive line is taking a big step back, and we know the defense already wasn't very good. This Baylor team, I think all year, well, I should say the second half of the year, has been extremely underrated, flying under the radar, arguably the best team in the Big 12, right up there with Arizona State. They get that Hail Mary. They don't get that Hail Mary against Colorado. They're playing in the Big 12 championship game. And who knows? Maybe they're in the college football playoff. I, I mean, I really liked what I've seen from this Baylor team on both sides of the ball late in the year. Found a running game that kind of balanced the offense with Washington. This just screams Baylor to me. They seem all in. Not sure how invested LSU is, judging from all the opt-outs, all the guys they'll be missing. I still think, I mean, look, Baylor's Baylor's run D is good. They're vulnerable through the air. I do think Nussmeier is going to play. We'll have some success through the air. They're going to put up some points here, but I think Baylor can match them and some. I think this is a Baylor game. Any thoughts?
I think this was one of the first bets that we made in bowl season when these matchups came out. We knew what LSU was probably going to be missing from a depth perspective with opt-outs, with transfers, with I mean, this is the roster. LSU, USC, they're just some teams that are always have team guys in the portal. And you were right. I mean, Baylor is 13th in defensive rushing success rate. So this game all comes down onto Nuss's arm, which, if you look at some of the coverage concepts, I think they'll have success in at least keeping Nuss mid FBS in success rate here. You go to the offensive side of the ball. I've been very impressed with this Baylor offense. 17th in passing success rate, the 13th in havoc allowed. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Dave Aranda is going to be ultimately motivated here. I don't really want to go down that narrative other than how many points do we put up on our former team? So again, it's one of those things where the head coach is motivated to never take a knee. Baylor is aside. That was put it a long ago. That number is not there. I would, how far do we go? 6 on Baylor. I think at this point you're just looking at the team total over, but I would wait. That number has come down. There's a key of 59.5 in the market. I think that could continue to dip with some of these LSU names that may be called out. That's going to affect the total to come down. That's going to give you a chance to get an extra point or two value in a Baylor team total over. So I would wait on that.
All right, before we get to the college football playoff, we'll just knock the rest of these bowl games out quickly because there's a lot of uncertainty in many of these games. Thursday, January 2nd, All-State Sugar Bowl, Ole Miss versus Duke. Duke plus 17 total, 51.5, 7:30 Eastern, ESPN on Thursday, January 2nd. Jacksonville, Florida. Dwight's Bistro, by the way, get reservations. Chancho King. It's an Ecuadorian food. I went to Ecuador, fell in love with their food. Don't know if they have Loco de Papa, but that's a place to check out. Here's the thing. Ole Miss out to a 17-point favorite. It looks like most of their guys are going to play. Like they're starting right tackle, couple defensive backs, maybe not. I don't think Trey Harris is going to play, but their defensive line, Trey Amos, Jackson Dart, it looks like they're all going to play. Duke, they're starting running back Star Thomas, he's in the portal, and then obviously Malik Murphy, their quarterback, which means Henry Bellin is going to start. Other than that, looks like pretty full rosters here. Does Ole Miss care? Right? Disappointed end of the year. Is this the disappointed SEC spot? But it's Duke's backup quarterback. The offense already had its limitations. I can't see them doing much against Ole Miss defense. Can the Duke defensive line keep them in this game? Ole Miss, best under team in the country this year. Is this another under? 7:30 Eastern, January 2nd. What do you say?
Well, I think Duke being one of the teams I wanted to play on this bowl season, Ole Miss being one of the teams that I wanted to fade, I immediately grabbed a number out there in the market on Duke, and that did not turn out well when Malik Murphy hit the portal. Didn't know that
Yep.
that was going to happen, right? So I think really we should talk about what do you do if you have this bad number. I'm sitting on it. I'm not completely convinced that Ole Miss is going to have all of their players there, and if they do, how much are they going to play? We saw, Shador Sanders play all the way until the last possession. We saw Cam Ward sit out in the second half. I feel Ole Miss has enough players that are at that kind of level that maybe they play a quarter, maybe they play a snap, or maybe they play the full game. But for me, if I'm sitting around with a bad ticket on Duke right now, which is not good without Malik Murphy, this team is 130th in quality drives, and that's when they're at full strength on offense. I'm still going to sit. If you can buy out at 14, if maybe there's some opt outs, maybe there's somebody missing at Ole Miss, you can buy out live during the game, possibly. I would suggest that. But otherwise, I'm going to sit with the number and remind myself that I cannot believe the Ole Miss team is the one that said that they're going to play, and Duke is the one that lost their quarterback. It's just, I think for me, it's going to be one of those things where it's just a learning lesson for the future because I was really shocked by this. But there's no way I think you can play Ole Miss minus 17. Not until you're about 90 minutes before kick and everybody is on the field. And if you start seeing missing pieces and you see that Ole Miss line start to drop, the under is the play more than it is saying I'm going to go grab Duke.
Yeah, I can't play a side in that game at current. I think it's on. I think the under is the play. I think Duke will try to ugly this up. I do think their defense will show up. Manny Diaz will have a good game plan. Their defensive line, I think, can win up front against the Ole Miss offensive line. So yeah, I mean, Ole Miss been an under team all year. I think it continues in the bowl game. Friday, January 3rd, Serve Pro First Responders Bowl in Dallas, Texas at Gerald Ford Stadium. You want some good homemade pasta, go to Lucia. North Texas versus Texas State. Texas State 13.5 point favorite, total 60.5, 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN this Friday. This game's a mess. North Texas, they're going to be with they're going to go down to their backup quarterback. They're also missing all portal guys, starting wide receiver, starting tight end, starting center, their left guard, another backup wide receiver, a couple other depth pieces. They're going to be turning to true freshman Drew Mestamaker, who came in for Morris as the backup this season. And they're gonna have a true freshman at tight end starting, a true freshman at one of the wide receiver spots, and a true freshman at left tackle. Texas State they're starting running back, starting right tackle, starting corner, who all committed to Power Four schools, all in the portal. Expect them to be out. They're starting both of their starting defensive tackles. Actually, all three of their snap count leaders up front are out. And it just came out overnight that Jordan McLeod is probably not going to play. Going to see limited snaps. This was the exact quote. Was told Jordan McLeod is still practicing with the team, but is unlikely to play significant snaps in the upcoming game against North Texas in the First Responders Bowl. He's preparing to showcase his skills at the East-West Shrine game as he looks to play at the next level. Who's that mean? Brad Jackson, who actually freshman, I think has some potential. I like what I saw in some limited snaps from him. This total has come down. This line has gone up. I don't know what to make of this game. There's probably going to be some more news between now and January 3rd. This is a game I probably just wait and see on. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, the total is dipping, I think, for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. So I think going on the under is the way that I would go. I would project this at 64 at full strength rosters. But, can we remember the fact that North Texas has had a couple of offensive duds throughout the season? I go back to the Army game, which was one of the more, not really sure how that happened, but I think the under is the play here. There's just so much fluidity going on with the rosters. And, there are periods of these offenses not being able to get things going. North Texas has never been able to run the ball. Texas State is 71st in offensive finishing drives. I think the under is the only play here.
I personally can't get there on the under now that it's come down. This was my favorite over of all the bowls if these offenses were at full strength. It's just unfortunate we're probably going to get backup quarterbacks. Uh, man, I mean, just picture these two teams at full strength. This just had points bonanza written all over it. But I can't get to the under, but I'm also not playing the over. This might be a rare pass for me in bowl season, but we'll see what more news comes out. Keep an eye on the app. By the way, agree. We haven't added any to the agree. Well, we have Alabama first quarter pending. We're 2-2 on the agree in the bowls so far. Head to head, G Tech for you. Diego. And how about Iowa State? That was sweet. Mario didn't learn his lesson. Kicking up three to go up 6 in the fourth quarter. It already cost your team a playoff spot. And now, in a Pop-Tart Bowl, you're not even going to learn? Unbelievable. All right. Moving on to the other game Friday, January 3rd, Duke's Mayo Bowl between Virginia Tech and Minnesota. Minnesota 7.5 point favorite here, total 42.5, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN in Charlotte, North Carolina. Go to Lay's sandwiches for a banh mi, and then Yunta Peruvian, my favorite food in the world. I don't like the ACC narrative. You got it. We had to bring it up again. Uh, they've been a mess, and Fleck has been great in bowl games. 5-0 at Minnesota. I expect him to get a mayonnaise bath at the end of this. Minnesota starting right tackle, signed with Ohio State. Looks like everyone else is going to play. Although I don't think their offensive tackle Ursary or their cornerback Justin Wally, they might be out. Wait till we get a final depth chart. Look at Virginia Tech. This team is decimated. I mean, you're talking starting left tackle, starting center, starting corner, starting safety, both linebackers, a running back. Then they're opt out. Those are all the guys in the portal I don't expect to play. There are opt outs. Defensive end, APR is the best pass rusher. Defensive tackle, Peebles. Both of their wide receivers, Felton and Lane. Their other starting cornerback, Dorian Strong. And recently in a practice, their starting running back, Tootin, wasn't spotted. Their right guard, Caden Moore, wasn't spotted. Their defensive tackle, other safety, all weren't spotted. I think they could be down 14 or 15 starters in total. Doesn't look like Drones is going to play at quarterback. It's either going to be Colin Schlee or Pop Watson. Sean Quinn will serve as the DC for Vatek. This team is a mess. Fleck knows how to row the boat, get his team ready for bowl games. I like Minnesota. I think they win easily.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is I should have ACC stapled on me, and walk around with it since Georgia Tech lost that game. But these are just two teams that are going in completely different directions. Virginia Tech lost three of their final four games. I mean, they're struggling to keep their roster healthy the entire season. Quarterback depth chart, had two quarterbacks going in. I mean, both Schlee and Kyron Drones were hurt. I mean, I'm not sure who's playing for this Virginia Tech team. And on the other side, you're right. Minnesota's record in bowls under row the boat has always been there. I would have made this game 4. Let's say it was full strength in the middle of the season on a neutral. I would have made this game Minnesota -4. So now your question is, does this offense have enough juice to cover a spread that's over a touchdown? Not really great at running the ball, not really great at line yards, 114th, but Max Brosmer has been the difference. And I think in the second half, he really caught fire. His numbers were much better in the second half than it was versus maybe the first 3 games of the season. So I think Minnesota is the only way to play. And if you're not happy with that -7.5, play PJ Fleck in the first half. That's when he'll have him most motivated. So if you don't not comfortable with it, I would suggest Minnesota first half.
I think Minnesota. Anything single digits is fine. Also, good money line parlay piece. All right, let's move on to Saturday, January 4th, the final non-playoff bowl, the Bahamas Bowl. It doesn't feel right that the Bahamas Bowl is not in mid-December. Between Liberty and Buffalo. Buffalo, 2.5 point favorite here. They were an underdog on open. Total 50.5. This game is 11 a.m. on ESPN2. Disrespect to the Bahamas Bowl. This game will be played in Nassau. The new Duff. Check out that place. I think the Duff is at like their national dessert. It's like a pastry. And then just find plenty of conch and eat all of it. Check the wind. We're still, a few days out. Wind always can be. Let me do a quick check here. Wind in this bowl game can always be a factor. Uh, let's see. Saturday, 15 miles an hour. Yeah, it's all right on the fringe. So just make sure you check the forecast. Here's the thing with this game. Liberty in the portal, their starting quarterback, Caden Salter. That's huge. He signed with Colorado. They have 3 starting offensive linemen. Their left guard, right tackle, left tackle, all in the portal. Don't think any of them are going to play. Both their starting defensive linemen, I think are going to be out. Former App State transfer Ryan Berger, he's going to be starting at quarterback. Jamie Chadwell said players in the portal won't play in the bowl game, and he does expect more opt-outs. Buffalo, their kicker went in the portal. He committed to Texas Tech. He's still going to play. The depth chart for Buffalo is the same for the bowl as it was in the regular season finale. How refreshing. Don't have to track much with Buffalo. Looks like everyone's going to play. Buffalo's terrible. One of the worst teams, if not the worst, that made a bowl. But Liberty, I mean, they're decimated, number one. I expect more guys to be out. And do they care? This team is had higher expectations. They wanted to go to the college football playoff. And by the way, they weren't very good all year. Here's a pretty telling quote. Jamie Chadwell on playing in the Bahamas Bowl. I told our team, if you want to complain about it, it's because you lost 3 times. It's your fault. It's my fault. We're not going to complain about anything. We're excited about going. That doesn't sound like they're really excited. Uh, I Buffalo, anything under a field goal.
Yeah, can you believe that Pete Limbo and Kenny Dillingham have the same perspective on if you get in the portal, you can still play for me, and Jamie Chadwell over there with the Flames and Jerry Falwell are like, if you get in the portal, forget it. You have nothing to do with our program. It has a major effect on this ball. And, there were already advantages here, especially for Buffalo. Their saving grace here was their ground explosives, a top 25 rank in EPA on the season with Al J. Henderson and the zone read run concept. And the Flames have struggled with inside zone read all year, allowing an explosive play rate on 16% of attempts. And their success rate was well below 50% in defending inside zone. So there's just advantages from a roster perspective. There's advantage from an X's and O's perspective. And I think that's going to play out here in this bowl. And I would keep playing it at 2.5.
Yeah, anything under 3 for me. Buffalo's good. VRBO, Fiesta Bowl, Glendale, Arizona, where Colin is right now. New Year's Eve. It's a lone playoff game on New Year's Eve. 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Penn State, an 11.5 point favorite over Boise State. Total 53.5. If you're in Glendale, but which you are, Colin, a Touch of Europe Cafe is a good place to check out. It's a Polish place. I will never forget the pierogies I had. I wish I remember the place in New York City like 10, 15 years ago. It was you had Polish menu. I don't even know if it's still around. But a good spot. Have you gone anywhere you want to mention?
Yeah, after today's events, we're gonna go to Chicken and Pickle. I will leave it out there. Everybody Google search it. There's like pickleball courts. There's ice skating rinks. It's the biggest bar I've ever seen in my life. It's like it's like a mile long warehouse of the coolest bar you've ever seen with everything from a 2-year-old to an 18-year-old to do while adults can drink and watch sports. So Chicken and Pickle, check it out.
All right, well, let's break into this game. Look, at this point in the season, lines are pretty efficient. We know these teams are, and it's not like the other bowl games where if you get information, you can kind of try to figure out who's motivated. There are some opportunities to be had. A lot more efficient in these games where you know everyone's going to play. However, this is the game I show the most value on from a pure numbers perspective. I make Penn State a 14-point favorite. So I certainly lean the favorite here. This is all going to come down to what can Ashton Jeanty do? Amazing year, almost 1,900 yards after contact, and he should be fresh and healthy, extended break. Boise State should also be healthy overall. They had, the Tubner should be back. They had injuries along their offensive line all season long, and so they should come in as healthy as they've been all year. But remember how dominant this Penn State offense looked on turf against Oregon. They're going to get to do that again. The Boise State defense, what can they do here? Well, how many tackles for loss and sacks can they get? They have the second most sacks in the country. But Penn State doesn't give up many. Boise State, they're going to sit in a lot of quarters. You don't want to, but they're going to give up some explosive plays. Their secondary is kind of weak. Now, you could say the weakness of Penn State is their wide receivers, and their offense isn't overly explosive. So maybe that works in their favor. But you can attack Boise over the middle of the field, which I think Aller can do. I think it sets up for a big day for Warren. I don't know if you're going to get into some of the run concepts, but Boise's D is dominant against outside zone. I mean, I'm number one in the country. But, just when you line up man concepts, hat on a hat, they're very vulnerable. Just like power rushing, which I think Penn State can do here to set up the pass. On the other side of the ball, the Penn State run defense, they don't really give up explosives. That's huge against Genty. They're going to get some negative plays here. Maddox Madsen, he has been good, but he also has been very lucky. I mean, he's got 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but 9 big time throws, 16 turnover-worthy plays. They throw with play action a lot. So again, how much can Genty do? Does that set up the play action? Do they maybe try to throw more on early downs? Because if he has to throw on known passing downs, he's not been good, and he's not been good under pressure. One big time throw, 8 turnover-worthy plays, and that Penn State pass rush and known passing downs is going to get pressure. We'll see how well Casey, who's a really good left tackle, can do on Abdul Carter, who's one of the best defensive players in the country. Penn State, I expect they're going to be a ton of single high, load the box. Let's focus all of our efforts on slowing down Genty. I mean, Penn State under Franklin, usually good as a favorite. I'm afraid of Genty, but I see too many advantages for Penn State. I actually like the favorite here. What do you see?
I make it 13, so I agree with you on the number that I think it is a little bit short, but I think there is a play on this game, and I'll just be completely transparent. My largest dollar wager is on this game. And so let's talk
Oh boy.
about let's talk about how I got to that. Boise State's going to run the ball on first down. They are 12th in the nation in rush rate on first down. They're going to hit Genty. 57% of snaps go to the run. And by the way, center Mason Randolph returned after missing like 10 games. He was hurt in the Georgia Southern game. Their center, since he has returned in the last 2 games, Genty 430 yards, 2 TDs. They run a lot of inside zone. They're about mid FBS, 8% power, 68% success rate with that. So when Genty is just simply handed the ball off and the line is doing man blocking and they're running power over the gaps, that is when Genty has been doing his work. When you look at the Penn State D run concepts, they are solid against outside zone, 57%. They only allow a big play on 1 of every 10 attempts. And Penn State's tackling per PFF is about 50th, and broken tackles allowed are 36. So I see Ashton Genty getting through to the line and then creating 4 or 5 yards on his own with people hanging off of him. And people are going to point to the Brashard Smith and like what Penn State did against them, and they averaged 2.8 yards. Completely different run concept. That was inside zone. This is outside zone, where I think Boise is better suited to do that. And then you look at Oregon. And the reason I look at Oregon against Penn State in the Big Ten championship, because they run outside zone. They average 4.4 yards per play, and they had a 64% success rate running that outside zone against the Penn State defense. That's exactly what Boise State does. And Jordan James created 4 missed tackles on 20 attempts. Noah Whittington created 4 missed tackles on 15 attempts. He had 2 explosives. And you look at Oregon, their line yards are 12th, right? So I think there's an avenue for Penn State, for Ashton to get through there, have some guys hanging on them and create those 5 yards. Because if they get into passing downs, Maddox Madsen is in deep shit, right? 41st and on target this season, going up against a Penn State defense. It's 17th in contested catch rate. Maddox has been destroyed in known passing downs with pressure. 1 big time throw, 8 turnover worthy plays on the season. It is bad news, Bears. But Boise is going to be able to move the ball. They are going to get into scoring position. They run the same run concepts that Oregon did, and Oregon was in scoring position all day long. They just have to stay in standard downs. I think they're going to get their points. You go to the other side of the ball, completely different story. I see zero resistance coming for the Penn State offense. Lots of outside zone coming in with Katron Allen, with Nicholas Singleton. Both of them should absolutely dominate. A Boise State defense is 31st in defensive rushing success rate, and that comes against a strength of schedule of 78th. That includes a lot of Mountain West teams, right? What is Penn State going to do on the ground? It's not going to look good, and they cannot defend man or power concepts. And you know what? Kotelnicki is going to throw that into, and Kotelnicki has been great about making this offense go fast, slowing this offense down. Do we think Drew Aller is going to get pressure here? Absolutely not. Boise is 79th in pass rush. And I said this on the last pod, and I'm going to keep on saying it when Penn State wins. 125 dropbacks for Drew Aller this season with pressure. 0 turnover worthy plays. He's ready for the NFL. If he can increase his release time, he's ready for the NFL. Boise is 80th in pass EPA allowed. And get this, you think Aller's going to have a clean window to throw to? Boise's 115th in contested catch rate, but I'm not even done about what the worst part of the Boise off defense is. Eric Shenander, who I kind of bag on every stop he has, Central Florida, Nebraska, always has tackling issues. Boise right now is second to last in PFF grading and tackling. They are
Yeah, that's problematic. Their
they're
tackling.
second to last in broken plus missed tackle rate. There, and so here's the deal. I don't see Drew Aller getting pressure. He doesn't make mistakes when he does. When they run the ball with Singleton and Allen, there is no resistance to what they want to run on the ground. And even if there is met at the line of scrimmage, this is the second worst tackling team in the nation. The play in the app came in over 52. I made it very clear I'd play this up to 55. I'm going to make it more clear while you and I are podcasting about what, a day and a half before the game. I think 55 and a half is good all the way up to 59. I actually project this game at 62. I can't play any props on Penn State stuck because guess what? It's all Kotelnicki's decision. Maybe he just wants to go ground with Singleton and Allen. Maybe he wants to use Tyler Warren. Maybe he wants to hide a few things before the next round of the playoff. I can't get props out of Penn State. I just know there's zero resistance here. And I think Ash and Genty helps out getting some points.
Yeah, I don't mind the over. But yeah, I think this is eventually a Penn State game. The only thing that worries me about the over is I'm not sure the pace will be there, and if like Penn State decides to go run heavy, and Boise State's probably going to lean on Genty, like the clock could be moving throughout, and then it's just going to come down to can these teams turn red zone trips into touchdowns.
But
I
wouldn't you
trust I trust Penn State's defense to get more stops in the red zone. That's part of the reason I do like Penn State.
Do you think Franklin and Kotelnicki and Allen are thinking about the next round against the Orange Bowl against the winner of Notre Dame, Georgia, and thinking that they want to show something here that they won't show in the Orange Bowl? So that's been a part of my thinking too. And do they run it up and show something that they'll never show again? That is James Franklin ball, in my opinion. You're going to play a G5 team with a spread this big. I'm going to show you a bunch of crap in a playbook that I'm not going to run against Notre Dame or Georgia. So that's also in the back of my mind.
Yeah, that could be the case. I just worry about the pace. That's it. Like because I do think Penn State power run concepts. Boise State's dominant against outside zone. So I think you're going to get a lot more just power run. They're going to stay out of the chains. It's going to set up stuff to Warren. I think this might be. It is tough with Kotelnicki, and it's tough to know that with the props. It's tough to know who's
If he's
getting the
getting 20
split
targets or
between.
if he gets 20 targets or five, that you never know with Tyler Warren, right?
Well, and then Allen and Singleton, who the
Yeah.
split there and who they're throwing to. Makes it tough. I would tend to lean to overs on this is an over Warren game, but yeah, it's tough with Kotelnicki. But I like Penn State here. All right, let's move on to Wednesday, New Year's Day. And by the way, it would be fitting if Penn State covered to end the year of the chalk. I'm looking forward to 2025 when we can get back to more normal times and have some exciting national champions. That's where I came up with year of the chalk, by the way. Is just everyone that was expected to win and like every sport won in 2024.
Yeah,
All right, let's get.
I think Oklahoma softball was minus 700 before the season started, and the women's Oklahoma softball, and of course, they won it, right? So that's
Yeah,
the
you can
year.
go on, and women's, men's, all the sports. All right, let's go to actually, we're going to start with the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day. But before we get to the Peach Bowl, this past Saturday night, our producer Matt put money on the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, then drank a case of beer and ended up calling the voicemail line at midnight from a garage in Indiana. I think he had the Colorado State team total over. Enjoy. Yeah, that was one game we whiffed on in Colorado State. Credit to Miami of Ohio. I mean, Colorado State was so sloppy, but Miami of Ohio clear right side there. And
I don't know. I don't know if Jay Norvell is going to hug me anymore. Like he's hugged me 2 years in a row at Mountain West Media Days. That might be over.
I don't know if I'd give him a hug after that performance. All right, let's start Wednesday. We have three college football playoff games starting 1 Eastern on ESPN. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Arizona State versus Texas. Texas down to an 11.5 point favorite. Total 51.5. In Atlanta, by the way, Iberian Pig. It's tapas, good drinks there. This is a screen game. You want to watch good screens and well-schemed offenses with Sark, Kenny Dillingham, Arroyo. You're going to see a ton of great-looking screens here. You can't throw it deep on Texas, and there's no Tyson, so they're really going to have to be scheming up some of the passes off play action, and then they're going to be feeding Scatterbo. I mean, just he's going to be well rested, as healthy as he's been all year. They're going to give him the ball. I don't know. 30 plus times through on the ground, through the air. Where I'm having trouble is like the Texas defense. I do believe in their secondary, but I mean, not the most impressive performance against Clemson,
Yep.
who just was moving up and down the field. And if you look at the Texas schedule, remember, they played the easiest SEC schedule. So we saw Clemson, move the ball on them through the air. The offenses they face this year, like Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, ULM, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Florida with like a third string quarterback, Arkansas, Kentucky, A&M, and then they lost to Georgia twice. Where are like the prolific passing offenses? Now, Arizona State is not that and won't have Jordan Tyson, but is the Texas defense a bit overrated? Is a question I asked myself after that Clemson game. On the same, similar vein, Arizona State's offense. I mean, after I watched Iowa State, like they torched Iowa State. Credit to them. I thought the Tyson loss would be bigger. It was not. But Iowa State's defense was pretty poor this year, and they had injuries, and we saw that against Miami, who was able to do whatever they wanted, even when Cam Ward went out of the game. Arizona State's offense. Here's what they face this year: Wyoming, Mississippi State, Texas Tech, Kansas, Utah, Cincy, Oak State, UCF, BYU, Kansas State, who I think's defense was so overrated, Arizona, and Iowa State. Like they didn't really face an elite defense all year. So what gives? I don't know. It's a question that I've been pondering for days here. Uh, Texas does have some issues tackling. Scadaboo, he's forced almost 100 missed tackles this year. How many can he force? How many plays can he break? The Texas offensive line is going to have a huge edge here. That's what does worry me about for Arizona State. And Texas should have an advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Like you're going to see that here. They should maul Arizona State just at the point of attack, similar to what they did against Clemson, which means their run game should get going. And Arizona State can't get pressure, and Ewers in a clean pocket, like that's when he thrives. I mean, Arizona State's bottom 20 pressure rate, and Ewers under pressure has issues. Arizona State, they want to sit in the zone, they want to prevent explosives, and then just hope you make a mistake because they are very good at turning teams over. So the questions are, which I think will decide this game. Three things. How big of a game can Scadaboo have? Like, just does he turn into monster mode, which he's done many times this year? That's the Arizona State. And I think they'll scheme up some stuff with the screen games, but like it's all about Scadaboo on their offense. On the other side of the ball, I don't see them getting much pressure. I do see Texas having success running the ball. So, how does Arizona State stay in this game, cover, and or potentially pull off the upset? It's two things. Do they turn Ewers over? Ewers likes to give the ball away. Arizona State, some good ball hawks in that secondary. And number two, something that's haunted Texas for 2 years. Do they finish drives? So can Arizona State bend with their zone, force a throw or two, capitalize on a mistake, and then hold Texas to field goals? That's the formula. What do you see here?
Oh boy, you said everything. You touched
My
on
number
it.
is 12, by the way. So
Yeah.
12 and a
Yeah.
half.
Yeah, I have already made a determination what I want to bet in this game, but the fact that this is in a dead zone, I haven't touched it. So I don't know if you're going to want to put this on the board, but I love a certain side in this one. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I do think Texas is going to have a lot of success here. I think this is going to emulate the Clemson game all over again. I'm not worried about the offensive line. Right tackle Cam Williams had an MRI. It was precautionary. He's back at practice. Jake Majors at center, full participant in practice. There's no issues that we thought there would be with the offensive line. Isaiah Bond, as of yesterday, was a full participant in practice. So it looks like
Big.
all systems to go here for Texas. And that's great for Quinn Ewers because he has absolutely dominated cover one and cover three to the point where his big play rate when he has passing attempts is at least one of every five creating an explosive play, high success rate. So I think This is not going to be the coverage looks that have given him problems against the Georgias and the better defenses in the world. So I think Quinn is going to be fine getting as many available yards as possible. Do I like a Quinn Ewers prop on his passing yards? I do. But we have a little bit, and especially when you look at Arizona State's defense, 132nd and creating a pass rush, 84th in defensive havoc. The field is widely available for the Longhorns to go up and down. The problem is what is going on down in the red zone with Stark. This is not just a one or two problem kind of thing. This is like an every game problem, right? I'm going to go through the numbers. Now, remember, keep in mind about 3.5 to 3.7 is the average for offensive finishing drives. Here's Texas's offense last few games. 3.4 against Clemson, 2.0 against Georgia, 2.1 against Texas A&M. The red zone issues continue to be a problem for Sark. So while I can look at everything on paper that says this Texas offense is going to dominate, and they will, that doesn't mean they're going to get it in the end zone. Now, I know that Arizona State's schedule is not a murderer's row of opposing offenses to get in, right? But they held Iowa State to 3.6, Arizona 1.5, BYU 3, Kansas State 2. So the one time that they blew up was Kansas. Kansas blew everybody up. So besides that, I think it comes down to, can Texas get into the red zone when they get into scoring position? And there's another thing going on here, Stuck. Like, for some reason, Sark is treating teams with kid gloves. You're up 20-10 on Arkansas, and you run like an 8-minute drive, and you take three knees at the goal line. Okay, so then against Clemson, literally they were trying to run out the clock. Clemson gets into the goal line, they have a goal line stop, and then they're trying to just run out the clock. Sark has no cares in the world about covering the spread. It is about survive, advance, get me 2 or 3 possessions up, and move on. So I just don't see it from him as a head coach trying to run things up. It's not like other head coaches we've seen. When you go to the other side of the ball, I mean, it's fruitless, I think, to say, can Skateabo, can he just go crazy on this offense? Yeah, I think he can, because they run a heavy amount of outside zone. When you go look at the Texas D against outside zone, just an average 51% success rate, average against counter and man, which they're going to see. But where is the problem? The Texas defensive ends have been bad in run defense. Baron Sorrell grades out very like one of the lowest against the run on the entire team. And Trey Moore is the worst run defender on the team of anybody that's played 130 run defensive snaps. They have the highest missed tackle rates of anybody else on the team playing defensive end. That's exactly where outside zone is going. So will Skateabo get his yards? I absolutely think so. I mean, Texas is 75th and broken tackles allowed. I think he's going to have people hanging off him and he's going to go. But that's not the reason that I think Arizona State is going to have so much success, right? And I mean, that's a big statement, saying that Cam Skateabo is not going to be the biggest reason. I think Sam Levitt is not getting enough credit here. This kid this season, 120 dropbacks, 1.5% turnover worthy play rate. He's just been nails when he's had pressure put on side of him inside of a pocket. Of course, he has that 24-5 TD to INT. But we need to talk about why Clemson was able to move up and down the field, because Sam Levitt hit his slot, Melquan Stovall, for a 63-yard explosive pass in that game. And when you go in the Big 12 championship, and that is after losing Jordan Tyson, you think, well, they have no passing offense. They did. That Melquan Stovall out of the slot was explosive. Let's go back and review how Clemson was so successful. Jake Brenningstool and Antonio Williams, 13 targets, 8 catches. They averaged 17 yards a catch. They had 60 yards after catch. Everybody else on the team had 6 targets for 51 yards after catch. Brenningstool and Antonio Williams out of the slot destroyed the middle of the Texas defense. And I'm sorry, I'm going to get individual on these Texas defensive players. Left cornerback Malik Muhammad was targeted 8 times. He allowed 6 catches, 120 yards. Brenningstool owned him. Slot corner Jalen Gilbo, he got targeted 7 times, 5 catches, 32 yards after catch, and allowed a TD. Antonio Williams knocked him around for a few explosives. And then finally, weak side linebacker Anthony Hill, picked on all day, and he's going to get picked on here by Cam Skateabo in the pass game. Brenningstool got him for a 27-yarder. Running back Jarvis Green burned him for a 25-yarder out of the backfield for Clemson. I just think 3.2 targets per game for Cam Skateabo, 13.7 yards per catch. I think there's some props here for Cam Skateabo in the receiving game, in the receiving yards game, in the touchdown game. But what happened was Clemson spammed the slot over the middle of the Texas defense, and they were in scoring position all day. I think we mentioned Brenning Stool and Antonio Williams. I mentioned that was the avenue. That's why I liked Clemson. Well, that's a real problem here. I like Arizona State. I'm sitting on 12 and a half at some books. If anybody wants to get back to that flat 13, which I think we'll get, I'm ready to play it. I mean, I should just play the 12. I am that confident. I like props for Skataboo in the receiving yards game. I like props
Yeah,
for
I like that too.
so I'm Arizona State all the way here.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of looks through the air, and the most likely scenario is they're playing in a trailing game state. The only thing I worry about Levitt is just again, what defenses did he face that have the same talent level as Texas? But there's a chance that Texas defense is also a bit overrated when you really dive in to their schedule. Yeah, I'm right on the number, but my gut says Arizona State
Doing
keeps
it.
it close.
You can put it on the board.
No, I can't out of principle.
Oh,
But 13, I would have been on the board. I'm not going to head to head with you.
no, I want
All right,
Arizona State. We'd be together.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not going against you. I
Yeah,
lean
yeah.
Arizona State. I just wish I had a bit better of a number.
We'll flash out the bat signal on the action app when it gets to 13. We will make sure to put it out there for everybody.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the Rose Bowl, also on January 1st, Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. It's a rematch between Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State, a 2.5 point favorite in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. In Pasadena, Osawa Sushi. Check that place out. A couple of really good family-run sushi places in Pasadena. Uh, this is what you get, Oregon. Dan Lanning.
Yep.
You wanted to beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship. Now you're an underdog in your first game in the College World Playoff, despite being the 1 seed and the only undefeated team in the country. This one should be a dandy. I look, I like Ohio State in this game, but I mean, you're paying a premium for them. For
Not,
sure. Like
not if
if
you find a cheap money line.
you know, I think I'm going to approach this because I do think Ohio State. I think Ohio State's winning the national championship.
What?
Yep. I think Ohio State's winning the national championship. I actually think the winner of this game is winning the national championship. Um, and I think Ohio State's going to win this game. But I don't. I mean, who do you think's going to win the national championship?
Well, I agree with you on this game, but
Do you think Oregon's winning this game?
I think we need to talk about that the next game that we cover. I think we need to talk about it when we get to the Sugar Bowl.
Uh, so yeah, I think Ohio State's winning the national title. I think they're, from what I saw against Tennessee, it is truly the Ryan Day, us against the world. It's Ohio against the world, and I think their players have taken that loss to Michigan and used it as fuel. Uh, I know it's kind of narrative-y, but it's just what I think. I do make Ohio State a small favorite in this game. The biggest questions I have here. So the way I might play it, because I do think Ohio State wins, and it's there's not that much value, and there's no value in this number in the futures market right now. But I might put a little bit on Ohio State plus three. What's out there? Plus 350 to win
Yeah.
the national title. Where it would have value is if there's chaos elsewhere, and if Arizona State beats Texas, then there certainly would be. And I think that's the one. I think Arizona State's much more likely to potentially upset, even though that's a bigger spread.
Think about this.
Than
Think
Boise.
about this real
Get
quick. Your avenue here, and I just add on what you're saying. We just broke down why Texas has given up having so many problems with Clemson. Did we just see what Ohio State did in the middle of the Tennessee defense? Right.
Yep.
I mean, you're right. The winner of this game, which I agree with you, there's a path. All right, go ahead.
So these two teams met earlier this season in Eugene. Oregon held on to win by one. It was a high scoring game. I agree with the over move here. It's an obvious one, but I mean, I do wish I grabbed some of this before it went to through the key of 55. Ohio State's offense against Tennessee finally did what I wanted them to do. Now, I think that they'll also have success on the ground here, which I didn't think they necessarily would against Tennessee. I should say relative success. Just though they could run the ball a little bit more than I think they could have against Tennessee. But I don't think their offensive line is going to get great push here. Their offensive line just doesn't get great push due to the injuries. If you go back to the first meeting, that's when they lost their left tackle, and it was noticeable. And since then, they've lost their center. And by the way, Oregon will have Birch back at defensive end. They didn't have them in the first meeting. But this Oregon defense to me is overrated. I mean, we saw what Penn State did to them. We saw what Boise State did to them. I I think Ohio State's going to be able to move the ball. Now, what happened in the first meeting? Ohio State couldn't get stops. Number one, their defensive line, their edge rushers didn't really show up, and they've been hit or miss. And Oregon has outstanding tackles, probably the best tackle duo, right there with Texas in the country. So can Ohio State get pressure? But Ohio State, what they did in that game is they left their corners on islands, played a lot of single high, and Burke got destroyed on the outside. Stewart went bananas, had his best game of the season. I think you see them go with more safety help, two high looks this game. They have two really, really, really good safeties, and they're going to make Oregon kind of drive the field more here, and then choose. They're going to pick and choose. Obviously, they're going to mix it up, but I do think you see more two high looks to prevent some of those explosive plays. I just think Ohio State's the better overall team, and I think this Oregon defense is ripe. Our producer's very upset that I said Ohio State's going to win it all. Put a message in the live chat, but curious to get your thoughts on this. I mean, like the thing is, from a numbers perspective, this got to three. I should bet Oregon.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm a bit conflicted, but my gut intuition, everything that I've watched this year says Ohio State gets their revenge here, and they're going to win it all.
Well, sir, you have provided the bread. Let me put the beef in the middle of this sandwich so I can tell you what's actually going on. Ohio State and Jim Knowles and Ryan Day had a big conversation after they lost to Oregon. They said something has to change. And so Jim Knowles is being pressed. Uh, Jim Knowles is being pressed in the press conference leading up to this game and being asked, like, what are the changes? What are the changes? And he really didn't want to give it away about what exactly has changed with this Oregon with the defense, because it's a 4-2-5. They have that bullet position. That they run a lot of cover one. Well, who was the biggest win in the transfer portal a year ago? Was Caleb Downs coming in to play safety, and he is the one that they've had at the top at the deep safety, the single high safety and the cover one that's been there the entire season. He was there through the Oregon game, and it just wasn't working. Denzel Burke gave up 162 yards at the corner position. He needed help, and the single high safety just couldn't get there to help him out at any point. Plus, Caleb Downs has so many additional abilities than just patrolling 30 yards back behind the line of scrimmage. They needed to do something to get Caleb Williams more active, turn him into what I call a queen of the chessboard, where he can move anywhere at any time and take up any square. Well, they made that change after the Oregon loss. They went and put Jordan Hancock. They took him in a starting role back at the deep safety. He was playing against the slot. They put him in the back, and then they said, Caleb Downs, you go wherever you need to go. Since that game, Jordan Hancock's been targeted 34 times. Opposing quarterbacks have an NFL rating of 59. Hancock on the season, 4 PBUs and an interception. You go and look at Caleb Downs, missed only 2 tackles, and I think he has 24 stops on the season, tackling in space like an animal. Now, it took forever to get that out of Knowles, because he first came in with all of this coach speak. We have renewed intensity. We're lining up faster. The defensive ends care. We just had a subpar game. No, the change that has turned this Ohio State defense into a national championship defense is the fact that Caleb Downs, the biggest transfer portal win last year, is roaming the field anywhere he wants, and he is not assigned to be the single high safety in this cover one defense. And I can go into a billion other stats. I could talk to you about what Oregon's going to do here and what Oregon's going to do there. But frankly, Dylan Gabriel's average depth of target is 6.9 yards. Tez Johnson's doing the work. Evan Stewart's doing the work. And guess what? When you're going to let Jordan James and Noah Whittington get these balls behind the line of scrimmage, and you're going to allow Caleb Williams to roam and stick them in one-on-one space, advantage Ohio State the whole day. And by the way, can we talk about a little bit of luck in that box score? Dane Lanning went nine. I'm sorry, the third downs, the fourth downs. My eyes really got open with that Penn State game because Penn State ran Oregon up a flagpole. And I know Ohio State can do the same thing. I mean, Penn State had higher overall yards per play. There was no pressure on Drew Aller whatsoever. And by the way, he doesn't make mistakes. Oregon finished 67th in defensive rushing success rate, 119th in defensive stuff. We've known their defense is bad against the rush. It's worse than I thought. I remember there was big reasons why I was on Ohio State when they went out to Eugene, and they just didn't perform offensively enough, and their defense got cracked. Well, the defensive side is fine, but now on the offensive side, they're going to take advantage of an Oregon defense that has just fallen off the map. They used to be second in the nation in creating contested catches. Right now, they're 50th in creating contested catches. They're also 50th in broken tackles allowed. This Oregon defense is getting worse game by game by game. And by the way, if Will Howard doesn't slide with time expired, you don't think that they don't make that field goal? On the season, Jaden Fielding from the 40 to 49 range has hit 5 of 6. He was going to nail that 47-yard field goal, and this would be a completely different narrative. It would have been a completely different season. Listen, what Penn State did to the Oregon defense should have opened everybody's eyes up to what's going on with the Ducks defense. It is degeneratively getting worse. Ohio
I
State
mean,
is,
even the Maryland game, Maryland was moving the ball up and down the field.
yeah.
Michigan had success moving the ball. But I mean, look at these offenses that they faced all year. I mean, so Ohio State put up 30, Ohio State put up 31, Boise State put up 34. Here are the other offenses they faced: Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State, Idaho, Purdue, Illinois, Maryland, uh, Michigan, Wisconsin, Washington. And then Penn State put up 37.
Yeah.
So I think now that the only thing that I worry about like Ohio State's playing this disrespect card, but Oregon could do that here too. And it is big game day. Like, is he going to turtle up here and not be aggressive? And and then you have Lanning. Lanning's gonna be able to play the disrespect card here. Like, we're underdogs. We were number one. Like, Oregon's gonna come out fired up. Is there rust though? That concerns me
I,
for Oregon.
I
But
don't think the
this,
field. I don't think the field at the Rose Bowl helps Oregon speed at all. If that's one thing for Tez Johnson, for Evan Stewart, that's one thing.
I mean, I'll take the Ohio State receivers over Oregon's receivers. And by the way, more Jeremiah Smith in the slot, I think, is a good thing. Uh,
Can I say one last
yeah,
thing about Will Howard?
yeah.
I need to eat crow, right? I've kind of bagged on him all year since I went and got it from Kansas State. He has been mistake free in the biggest games. Against Tennessee, he had three big time throws, no turnover worthy plays. That was his best performance since he played Northwestern. He saw only 8 pressures against the Tennessee defensive line, didn't make a mistake. Saw 9 pressures against Oregon the first time, didn't make a mistake. So Howard has done what he was asked to do when he transferred in. Don't screw us up. And the only thing that he's done is
Well,
slide.
under pressure, both quarterbacks are shaky under pressure, and the delta is pretty wide, right? Most quarterbacks are going to have bad numbers under pressure, but compared to when they're kept clean. So I will say, like, I don't. It sounds like we're disrespecting Oregon too much. Like, Oregon, these are the two best teams in the country, in my opinion, and both quarterbacks can be vulnerable under pressure. And I will say I'm a bit more worried about Will Howard being under pressure with Ohio State's offensive line issues than I am Dylan Gabriel, who has, elite tackles and a much stronger offensive line, and an Ohio State defensive line that it's hit or miss whether they're generating pressure. So that worries me a bit. Landing playing it's small game day. They need to come out here and be aggressive. So 55.5, they cross the key. It's a big game. I don't know if I'd still go the over, but I'd lean that way. And I think Ohio State is the side, but it's not like this number has a ton of value.
I took -125. We're recording this on the morning of December 30th. There are 4 -125s out there. I would play it to -135. Everybody can do what they want with sliding the point spread around and getting the juice. I am Team Ohio State here, and I'm sure the Buckeye fans that listen to this podcast are probably not happy with that, but I cannot get over Caleb Downs free roaming on that defense and what Hancock has done to the single high safety. It
All I
has
need you to do is put out a tweet in the first quarter saying Ohio State's offensive line is losing every battle, and
I,
then we'll be safe.
yes, I'll do that.
All
I will
right.
schedule it.
I'm putting Ohio State on the board. I'll be on them in some form or fashion. I need a future.
So are
Um,
we okay, so you want to talk about the next game and I'll tell you what I think is going to happen because now that we've covered this game and we both like Ohio State to advance, and if you want to do a little preview for next week, and I don't want to ruin next week's pod, if Texas is getting torn up over the middle by Clemson, and I think they're going to get torn up over the middle by Arizona State and survive, you're in bad shape heading up against Ohio State. You are in bad shape in the Cotton Bowl. So I think we need to talk about this game because I think this is who's going to be the one that plays in the national title game.
all right, so it's the All-State Sugar Bowl, 8:45 Eastern on New Year's Day on ESPN. Notre Dame and Georgia. Georgia's a 1.5 point favorite here, total 45. Game is in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's a popular spot, kind of touristy, but it holds up. Go to Parkway Bakery for your po'
No.
boys. Fried shrimp, bread pudding. Well, God, well, you can throw in a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that doesn't know, I've been going to New Orleans since I was 18 years old. Aaron Rose is the bar. It's on the corner of Conti and Bourbon. It is small. It's tiny. It's about the size of a hotel room. They will pack at least 50 people in there. Everybody that covers the big game, when I was at the Final Four, when I've been to bowl games, no matter what I've been to, production crews, beat reporters, media, everybody that comes in as a tourist that knows New Orleans goes to Aaron Rose. And then if you can find the dungeon and they'll let you in, you should find the dungeon as a bar because it's a place only for people that locally work in New Orleans and it has a head count of only allowing 20 people in the door. It's the most amazing underground bar right there off of Bourbon and Toussaint. So those are my two bar recommendations. New Orleans is a town I've been in at least 2 dozen times, and so I just wanted to throw those two out there.
Yeah. And you got to get yourself uh beignets. What is
Oh,
the popular spot is Cafe Du Monde, and then a po'
but
boy.
don't go there. Don't go there. Go to Cafe Beignets. It has a live jazz band, and no one goes there because they all go to Cafe Du Monde. Go to Cafe Beignets, get your live jazz, and get your beignets.
All right, so getting into the game, Gunnar Stockton will make his first career start in the college football playoff. So I don't know what to expect here. I do think Georgia probably benefited more than any team from the bye. They were dealing with a lot of injuries all over. I think they're going to come in here and healthy, fresh, and you had time to work in a new offense. And you have a Notre Dame team that's not going to know what to expect, right? So there's some uncertainty here. What's this offense going to look like? It's not like they have a lot of tape on what this offense will look like. So I do think the bye actually worked in Georgia's favor here, more so than maybe it did for other teams. I think having said that, what do we expect from Notre Dame? They're probably going to play a lot of man, cover one, single high safety with Watts back there. And Georgia doesn't really have man beaters at receiver. There's no Riley Mills for Notre Dame, which does hurt a bit up front. So what do I think Georgia's going to do? I think they're going to run the ball a ton. I think it's going to be ETN. I
Mhm.
think it's going to be Gunnar Stockton design runs. They were so inconsistent running the ball this year, and Notre Dame's going to sell out, I think, to stop it and trust their corners. But does like a mobile quarterback, ETN back, and then maybe a healthier offensive line, does it lead to better results? Like the inconsistencies of the Georgia rush offense really puzzle me here. On the other side, I I mean maybe they go to like more multiple tight end sets, just go like heavier sets and just try to power away this game. On the other side, I don't see the Notre Dame offense doing much. You got to use Leonard's legs. It's a Georgia defense. Mobile quarterbacks can give them problems. But this Georgia defensive line, their defensive front should be healthy. I think they can stop the interior run game of Notre Dame. And they might even be able to dedicate more resources to the run game, which usually they don't. But I don't see Notre Dame's receivers doing much on the outside. I think they can get pressure on Leonard without blitzing on passing downs, and that's when Leonard really falls apart. I think they're going to play a lot of zone on the back end. Leonard struggles there. I This to me, now that this has got back up to 45, I don't know what's going to happen from a side perspective. I don't know who's going to win this game because I don't know what to expect from Stockton. Stockton they could scheme up some really good stuff that Notre Dame doesn't have on tape, and so there's a lot more variance to the Georgia offense. Stockton also could be terrible. It's his first start. He could have we already saw him have that terrible pick against Texas.
Let me ask you this as you go. Why was Kirby so committed to Carson Beck? Is it because of how bad Gunnar Stockton is, or is I mean I've never the commitment to Beck was insane, and it had to do with Stockton, right?
Could be, yeah. Could have played a part. But I don't really know what to expect from a side perspective. I think this is a toss-up game. The one thing I'm confident in is I don't think, like, I can't see Notre Dame scoring more than 21 points in this game. And I think Kirby will have a really good defensive game plan. By the way, you have two really, really, really good defensive coordinators who are also going to make really, really, really good adjustments.
Yep.
So I don't know if I'm going Notre Dame team total under or game total under 45. I know it's fast track. This game to me has like it's first to 20 wins. Um, I'll call it. I mean, I think this is like 20. Yeah, I'm gonna say final score 20-17. Somebody. I don't know yet. And I don't think I'm gonna have a strong take on the side. So curious to get your thoughts. What do you think?
I do have a strong take on the side. I'm taking every single point I can get with Notre Dame, not like Ohio State and just buying the money line. I need that point and a half. All right. I think it's going to evaporate. I think you're eventually going to come up to basically minus 110 on both sides. And I think, the Gunnar Stockton thing, I think we'll let a lot of other people talk about that, but you just don't know. I mean, he's got, five designed rushing attempts for 23 yards against Texas. A fumble was mixed in there. We're not going to base an entire podcast on a little sample size like that. 25 of 32 in passing this year in garbage time. He has yet to record a TD or a big time throw. We're not going to base our opinion on that. But I think you're right. Trevor Etienne should absolutely cook here. Notre Dame has been horrific against inside zone, 43% success rate. I thought Indiana would take advantage of that. Who did take advantage of that Notre Dame defense on the inside? USC. USC ran inside zone for 59% success rate, 7.5 yards per play on the ground, and they were never stuffed. 18% of rushing attempts by USC were stuffed. The national average is 30%. So, and
You don't have to
USC,
worry about Mills now either.
right. And Mills is gone. Howard Cross came back. Don't know if he's playing at full strength, but now we've got to go and get Gabriel Rubio to play defensive tackle now that Riley Mills is gone. Rubio's huge, 6'5, 316. He's about the same size as Riley Mills, but he was probably a backup for a reason. So that's a number maybe you want to watch on the defensive line for Notre Dame. So I do think Trevor Etienne is going to have a lot of success moving the ball here. And Notre Dame's defense, I think, is just they're ripe to be taken advantage of over the middle. And Etienne had his highest yards after contact against Texas since the Auburn game in week 6. He is healthy. So this is all about offensive finishing drives, red zone play calling, and that's where I think Notre Dame has a little bit of advantage on this side. Notre Dame's red zone defense, ninth in defensive red zone efficiency. Yes, I know they're missing Riley Mills, but they also missed Howard Cross for like the last 5 weeks also. Georgia, before I go to the other side of the ball, you're expecting Gunnar Stockton to come in and throw to a set of wide receivers that lead the nation in drops. Are you kidding me? We're gonna have a quarterback that's never played. We're gonna throw him to these receivers. Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell have combined for 20 drops this season. Georgia as a team leads the nation higher than UMass in drops, and we're gonna say that Gunnar Stockton can throw to them. I will believe it when I see it, especially against Notre Dame, who ranks number 1 in PFF and defensive passing success rate. So Trevor Etienne or nothing for the Georgia Bulldogs. You go to the other side. This is where I think the advantages are, and I think there's a couple of players that not a lot of people are not really paying attention to. Notre Dame runs that heavy inside zone. I mean, I could give you the whole Indiana handicap and I could give you the whole Army handicap about how I ranted and raved about how much I love Notre Dame and their rushing attack. Well, Georgia's pretty average against inside zone. I have a small negative EPA. They can allow a couple of explosives. Again, and when they run up against man concepts, it's still about 50% success rate. So there's no real big thing for Jeremiah Love to get through the line and you see a bunch of explosives. Georgia's 36th in defensive rushing success rate, but they're 62nd in stuff rate. Notre Dame should own the offensive line. And you say, well, What are the injury situations? I think people are, if you read the practice reports, you and I podcasted in July and talked about how Notre Dame's offensive line was going to be led by an all-American freshman, Charles Jagasaw. He had a torn pectoral, never saw any playing time this season. It's what actually called me off Notre Dame against Texas A&M in the opening game of the season. Guess what? He's healthy. He's practicing for the Sugar Bowl. So a preseason All-American left tackle, blindside tackle is going to be there. Um, when you get past that, I think the mobile quarterback issue is a serious problem for Georgia. Let's look at some history here. Georgia Tech, 8 overtimes. I believe I had so much wine, I can't remember the eighth overtime. 47 carries, 260 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Georgia Tech on the ground. Haynes King had 110 yards and 3 TDs. What are we doing here? You want me to go farther? UMass, AJ Haston, 3 rushing attempts for 50 yards. Jackson Dart, 8 of 50, and Jalen Milrow absolutely went ape shit on September 28th, 16 rushes, 117 yards, and 2 TDs. You're telling me Riley Leonard and his 10 rushing attempts per game, and he averages 6.3 per carry, is not going to get over 60 here? A rushing TD in 10 of 13 games this season. This is a serious problem. I know the health of Georgia should be better than it ever has been, but these kids just haven't shown it all year. There's another problem here, right? Jordan Faison was a walk-on freshman last year for Notre Dame. This season he had an ankle sprain. He dealt with it. The numbers weren't good. He finally showed up against Indiana full strength. Riley Leonard gave him 9 targets. He had 13 targets in the previous 4 games. Riley Leonard, 9 targets against Indiana, 7 catches, 89 yards, all at the wideout position. He raised his season yards per route round up to 1.9 off that one game. Notre Dame has a little bit of a dimension of a passing game if Riley Leonard needs it. I don't see Georgia defending mobile quarterbacks. They haven't done it all season. If I just read off a UMass stat, that's pretty bad. All right. And now Notre Dame actually has a little bit of a passing game working in here. Not saying Georgia's defense isn't a major upgrade over all the teams that I just mentioned, but Georgia just should not be allowing a UMass quarterback to go for 50 yards. So I'm on Notre Dame here, but I want all the points because I agree with you. First to 20 wins. I believe that's going to be the Irish. If I can get 2, I'll take that. If I can you get money line, take that. I like Notre Dame here to advance.
One thing that worries me about the under, and also for Georgia, it's a small thing, but I think the defenses are going to rule the day. Brett Thorson, their stud punter, who I think was the second best punter. I think I had him at number 2 in the Ray guy. I had the USC punter, who also got hurt in the bowl game. Was my number 1. He's a weapon. He can flip fields. He doesn't allow any returns. He's out for the year.
Yeah.
So does that hurt the field position? Which does worry me for the under. Could help Notre Dame. Notre Dame has shaky special teams. There's some areas of weakness there too. I
It
still
doesn't
don't trust
matter.
their.
Does it matter if Jeremiah Love's running 99-yard explosive rushing touchdowns?
By the way, yeah, I mean Notre Dame against. I don't. You take that away. Notre Dame didn't have much success running the ball. I think that's what it's going to look like
True.
against Georgia. Like they're going to have to. We'll see if Love can break one. He's certainly capable of doing so. But I think both teams are going to rely on their backs. But I just don't see a ton of explosive runs happening. And I think you're going to see two really good defensive coordinators. They're going to have good game plans, but I think they'll be able to make good adjustments. I don't think Leonard and these receivers are going to hit a ton of explosives. I don't think Georgia can, and I don't think that Kirby and them are really going to let him or want him to, unless the game gets out of hand. Then you have to. But I think it'll stay close, low scoring throughout. So I like the under. Should be a really good game, but I think this is I think this is the under. Now that it's at 45, like that's the number that I wanted.
Yeah.
Like there were some books that came out with like 42, 43,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's too low on a fast track. But at 45, um, and I also like the Notre Dame team total under at
So
21 and above 21. They could easily win this game, but like I said, I think it's first to 20. I even could see this game being like 17-14.
yeah.
Like this could look like the Texas A&M Notre Dame game.
Well, so now that we've discussed this, I feel like you're leaning Notre Dame's because you love your punters.
I
I
truly have no idea. Like I
okay.
truly don't. I don't even have I usually have a gut feel, and like, all right, after everything I've watched, who do I think is going to win? Georgia is so hard to crack. Like, and now you have a backup quarterback. Look at Georgia's results this year. Like you did on a week to week basis. What you never know what you were going to get.
Well, they're not playing Texas this week, so that's one thing.
So yeah, they're an enigma. Georgia's an enigma, and now you have a new quarterback. So I truly have no idea.
So I'm going to
I
be
trust both defensive staffs and both the advantages both defensive personnel groups have over the respective offenses. And the key is that like Georgia's not going to consistently beat Notre Dame's corners, which will enable them to just sell out against the run, which I think Georgia's going to lean on. And I don't think Notre Dame can attack Georgia consistently downfield with their receivers. So it's going to allow Georgia to dedicate more resources to the run. I also like the scheme that Georgia plays where Riley Leonard struggles a bit more from a coverage perspective. Like, so, and then you're going to have these adjustments. It's like the one thing I am confident in this game, which means it'll be 35-30 at the half, is that neither offense will, be able to sustain drives, also finish drives. I don't like this is going to be like field goals, field position, clock running. Like, so yeah, this is I'm pretty confident in this under, which means it has no chance on a fast track. But that's where I really have no feel on the side.
So you mentioned you think Ohio State's going to win the national title. I was waiting till we got done with the Sugar Bowl at the very end of the podcast, and I will leave this. I have a Georgia future. It was the first bet that I made when I walked out of the national title game in Houston last year. I said, I'm taking Georgia. They're the one, da 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 da, whatever, right? I am going to be betting not just Notre Dame as a hedge to that to win the national title, but I am going to join you in this love of Ohio State, and I'm going to find a Notre Dame Ohio State exacta box national championship.
By the way, wow, our Bruce is going to lose it. The
Yeah,
chart room,
where's the chat? I'm looking for him.
chart room in New Orleans, per our producer's great dive bar. Um, and yeah, he co-signs Parkway for Po' Boys. Get the fried shrimps and the bread pudding there. All right, that'll do it for us. We're not done for the season. We got a couple more episodes, starting with the semifinal preview, which we will record next Tuesday. But that'll wrap up the quarterfinal preview, in addition to 8 other bowl games the rest of the week. Thanks, Colin, for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. It really helps us out. Subscribe to our BBOC YouTube channel. Thanks again for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the bowl season and the college football playoff quarterfinals. We'll see you next week as we break down the semifinals. Cheers.
Peace out.